All right, how's it going? Happy Sunday. Um, Thank you for joining me for my new presentation. It's called The Ancient Mythology and Etymology of Jacob Bryant, the spread of the worship of the god Amen. You know Amen in the Bible because you say it a lot if you're if you're a reader of the Bible, or you might know him as Amen Ra. But prior to that, he was just Amen by himself. Okay, Jacob Bryant. Jacob Bryant was a scholar of the late 1700s and early 1800s. He produced scholarly works before the onset of the decipherment of the Egyptian hieroglyphs and monuments. He was a member of the royal courts of England, and studying his works shows us what scholars thought or discovered before the translations of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Bryant's work seems to show us that a translation of the pyramid texts must have been available at his time. This is because he discusses information related to the 4th and 5th dynasties of Egypt, which is the time the pyramid texts are dated to. Either the pyramid texts had already been translated, or popular parts of ancient Egyptian history was known. Okay, At, Aeth, Eth, Fire, the Nile, and Egypt. Ait or Aeth equals a title of Ham of the Bible, or the sun. It means fire, light, and heat. One of the most ancient names of the Nile River was At. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm just assuming it's At and the I silent. So if I'm saying it wrong, my apologies. At is also the name of the eagle, which is also sacred to the sun. At was also considered a word for heart because the heart is to the body as the sun is to the earth, i.e., it gives life. The sun gives life to the earth. In Egypt, the hieroglyph of the heart is hovering over the vase and incense and was the symbol of Egypt. Egypt was named Aeth and At. Instead of Aeth, think of Eth, like in Ethiopia. The Egyptian Delta, shepherds, and colonies of Egypt. Aeth-ur was a city where the shepherds resided in Egypt and Israelites lived there. Think of Ur, the city of Abraham. It was in the upper Egyptian Delta and was sacred to Ur or Horus, a title of the sun god. Therefore, the city of Aeth-ur worshipped the Egyptian sun god. Remember, this is where Israelites are living at. King Moses of the 18th dynasty of the southern sun gods destroyed the city and the shepherds retreated. The colonies that came from Egypt were called Ethia and Athia. Let's think again of Ethiopia. This gives us meaning to when the Pharaoh says, Punt has been established, equals Ethiopia is now a colony of Egypt. And here to the right we have a picture of Tanis, which is in the upper, or Zoan. Tanis, also called Zoan, in the upper delta, upper Egyptian delta, where the Israelites were at. Okay, At, Aeth, and the Afro-Asiatic peoples. The Greeks called their goddess of wisdom Ath-El and Ath-An, which equals the sun. Anything that was good, holy, or praiseworthy was called Ath. At is originally a title of the sun god of light. Ath is found in many Ethiopian, Canaan, and Greek names and places. Bryant contradicts himself here and says Ath comes from Babylonia and Chaldea to Egypt, and from Egypt to Syria and Canaan. Per my research, this can't be true and is quite the opposite. This confusion is caused from the Afro-Asiatic people's homeland, which is the highlands of Ethiopia. From there, they migrated into Egypt and the Persian Gulf region and India. The serpent and volcanoes. Ath was joined with Herm in Greek to make Ath Herm or Herm Athena. Herm is they got from Hermes, and Hermes is the Greek god equivalent to the Egyptian god Thoth. Oph, like in Ethiopia, signifies a serpent. Therefore, the name of Ethiopia means the sun and the serpent, i.e., also the Egyptian religion and royalty, right? The snake is the symbol, the cobra snake is the symbol of the Egyptian royalty. The serpent is the emblem of the sun, time, and eternity, the same as Vulcan or Vulcanus. In my previous lectures, we learned that Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda all have many volcanoes. The symbolic worship of the serpent was everywhere in the world. To the right, it's kind of blurry, so I don't know why it came out that way, but this is a picture of the volcano Jebel Mara in Sudan or Nubia. So not only were our volcanoes found in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, but they're also found in Sudan. The sun and the serpent. Legends of the serpent can be found at Chalcis, Thebes, and Delphi, all places where Egyptians migrated to. Apollo is called Python, the same as Opis. The Greeks say that Cecrops, who was the first king of Attica or Athens, brought serpent worship to Greece. The name for the sun was San, Sun, Zon, or Zion, or also Zoan or Zion. The Babylonians called it Soan. The Sidonians near the famous city of Tyre called it Zauan, and they worshipped Adonis. Zauan was Adonis of the Jewish Bible, who is Adam or Atum, the sun god of Egypt. Fire, Ham, and Shem. Appa or Pitta, the Egyptian god Ptah, means fire. Ast also means fire. According to Budge, Ast is Isis, and therefore Isis is a fire goddess or a sun goddess. Shem or Shamesh equals heaven and sun. Ancient Syria was devoted to the worship of the sun and heavens, and the natives of that country called it Shems and Shams. Ham or Amen was worshipped as the sun and was also called Sham or Shem. Many people have mixed up the descendants of these two, Ham and Shem. And to the right we have a picture of Amen. Khufu, the serpent god. Aside from Ham being called Amen, he is also called El. Cheops, who is King Khufu of Egypt, the 4th dynasty, is the same as Chiops or Chiops. Separated. They separate the word. So Ka. So originally Egyptian words used K instead of C. So if you have this spelled Kiops, it would be Ka is the spirit, and then Ops is the snake, the serpent. So spirit of the serpent. Kiops means the Domus Opus Serpentis in Greek, I guess, and is the name of his pyramid erected to the sun. Khufu was the Ophite or serpent god of Egypt. Remember that Ra switches the rule from Khufu and his dynasty to his own. Khufu's symbol was a snake. In the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, we see the snake being brought down to bow before Ra, i.e. the fourth dynasty is being replaced by the fifth. Syncellus says that Venefres built this great pyramid, but many other people and after Syncellus say that Khufu had it built himself. The city Edessa and Nimrod. Those who worship Amen titles the sun Zan, especially Syria, Mesopotamia, and Emesa, Edessa, and Heliopolis. It's interesting that Bryant mentions Edessa because Edessa is said by Ralph Ellis to be the city that Jesus was a king of. If you don't know who Ralph Ellis is, he's a researcher who researched the historical Jesus, and he came to the conclusion that the historical Jesus is a king of this city Edessa. Now Bryant says that Edessa was one of the oldest cities of ancient Syria, and that it was said to have been built by Nimrod. Now my research shows that Nimrod is Pharaoh Unas, the last king of the 5th dynasty. Therefore we can see here in Bryant's work that he seems to be discussing the 4th and 5th dynasties of Egypt. If Edessa was built by Nimrod at the end of the 5th dynasty, that means it existed about 2300 BC and established by a sun god of Ra. So Unas is the last pharaoh of the 5th dynasty. The 5th dynasties are sun gods of Ra. And that time when Unas was pharaoh was about 2300 BCE. So if Nimrod founded Edessa, then that means Edessa is about started at about 2300 BCE. And to the right we see a picture of Pharaoh Unas suckling a goddess or his mother here. S is As, or, and Isis. So these breakdowns are the etymology from Jacob Bryant's book. Most of this research is Jacob Bryant's from his book, and he's showing how they compounded and formed the words. Edessa or Edessa is a name or title of the sun or sun god, light, or fire. Bryant says Edessa is a compound of S and is and a name for fire. We know that the goddess Isis is the fire goddess or sun goddess, and therefore the city of Edessa is named after Isis and the sun gods. He says that the Emperor Julian, in his hymn to the sun, says that Edessa from time immemorial was sacred to Asas or Azaz, the sun goddess. So that's the name of her there. The name also means unity or one, and the Roman goddess Ceres is Isis's equivalent. So what that means is all this as so we see here in this research that Jacob's providing is that the priesthood of Amen is spreading out from Egypt to all the region like where the Roman Empire was at. And so they all those they the gods, the Egyptian god, so they brought the Egyptian gods with them, but they just changed the names to the name of the people that were living there when they arrived in their own language. When As is combined with Or, like in Osiris and Esorus, we see the god Osiris here, or in Egyptian Asar. Osiris was worshipped in Syria, Sicily, and Carthage, and they say that he founded Carthage. Bryant says that S or is often combined with L, and many places are named from them. Examples such as Eleusa, Laza, Zila, Silas, and etc. Hang on one second, let me let my dog in real quick. Oh, come on, Eve, hurry. Go. Okay, so the priesthood of Amen and fire. He says all these places are founded by those that worship Amen, the sun. That they could always be found near hot springs, sulfur lakes, pools of bitumen, and mines. We consider that those who worship Ra or if we consider that those who worship Ra or Amen came from Sudan, we find a volcano at Jebel Mara near Darfur in Sudan, which erupted approximately 3,500 years ago, or about 1500 BCE, and its height was 10,000 feet high, and it has hot springs and steam vents. So from my research, what it's starting to tell me is that Ra, Horus, Amen are Nubian kings that came from Sudan or from Nubia and migrated into Egypt. So that's what I'm trying to tell you here. This is just one example. Bryant speaks of another place like this near the catacombs in Egypt. So there's many more volcanoes in Sudan. I showed you the picture earlier of Jebel Mara. The word Asia means the same thing, land of fire. He says Asia Minor Asian Minor, which is present-day Turkey, was called Asia and had many volcanoes and hot springs and fountains. He says that those who worshipped Amen always built their temples near places with fire and steam. So the priesthood of Amen was the most powerful authority in the world at the time, and they started to spread out regionally. And they're sun gods, and they worship Ra, but they also see the sun as fire, right? And religious beliefs of fire go back hundreds of thousands of years in Africa. Sun gods, fire, salt, and gold. Armenia, Babylonia, and Persia all had fire or sun gods. He says it is a title of Osiris, meaning he is a sun god. The priest of fire's names all started with either Sol, Sal, Sel, like Solomon or Solomon. Therefore, we see the king called Solomon, was a sun god. We see by his name. He has sun and he has Amen in his name. They all used incense. There was a fountain of the sun in Jerusalem. And the priest of fire mined for salt and gold. Bryant says that the ancient Germans and Scandinavians had the same principles as those who worshipped Amen and founded their temples in the same way. Meaning they set their temples near these salt and sulfur lakes and rivers and volcanoes and, used fire. They were especially fond of salt and nitrous waters. The land of Goshen. Goshen of the Bible is the northeast area of the Egyptian Delta, a very important region of Egypt because it was the place where Horus and Ra drove those who rebelled against Ra and the followers of Set to. Second, it was the area the Israelites were said to be in. Bryant says that Gazan, the Gosan of the Bible, means house of the sun. He says Goshen was under the rule of Cush, son of Ham or Amen. Therefore, if he is a son of Amen, then it's the Cush from Nubia, which is where they are from, not the Cush of the Red Sea and present-day Ethiopia. So the Cushites on the Red Sea in Ethiopia, we've discussed those in my previous Persian Gulf videos. Those aren't the same as what they named the Cushites of the Nubians. They call the Cushites of the Nubians, they also call them Ethiopians. He says that Goshen means the temple of the sun, and therefore the Greeks called it Heliopolis. He seems to be saying that Goshen is the city of Heliopolis or like it. This identification seems to be plausible. So to the right we see a kind of a map of Goshen, and we see Zoan, we see the city of Ramses, we see the city of Adam here at Pithom, Soka, all these famous cities from the Exodus. And then to elaborate a little bit more on the two different Cushite peoples, never mind. I won't do that right now. The battle for Zoan and the word Abor. We know that in the Egyptian mythology, Horus's final battle is at Zoan, and he defeats and kills the sun god Set. The inhabitants of that city began to worship Horus. So, in the Bible, or Christians want to blame Jews for killing Jesus, but we see in the original first mythology that Horus actually kills Set first. The followers of Set and any other enemies would have fled across the Sinai and took up a settlement nearby. Any children of Set still alive would have retreated, right? They wouldn't have stayed there because Ra wanted them dead, so they had to leave Egypt. So they were still Egyptians, but they had to left, and they wouldn't have went very far. They would have just went to a safe area outside of Egypt. The sun god was also called Abor, the father of light. This name is found all the way in Susiana in Persia, the civilization that existed prior to Elam, as Ka-Abor. Ham is Amen, the spread of the priesthood. Ham of the Bible and Cam imply heat and the consequences of heat. So the sun. Ham in Egyptian is Amen. He is a sun god and is also called Bel Amen. So it's interesting, he says it implies heat and then the consequences of heat. So the sun is not always seen as good all the time. Right? You get burned. If you're a pastoralist and you're out trying to find places for your cattle to eat, and it's in the blazing sun of Egypt in the deserts or whatever, and you're hoping you can find a tree to get in the shade, right? And then so he's also taking the so he's also combining, so the priesthood of Amen is also combining their name with the local god in Canaan, Bel. Like in Egypt, he combined it with Ra. So they, whatever place they move to, they don't get rid of the person's god or ancestor that they're worshiping. They, because that would be disrespectful. They're trying to get favor of the people and have the people like them so they can infiltrate and become powerful in that city or town or village. And so they combine their god. They want them to worship Amen, but they're going to combine him with their local god together, so they're both being worshipped together. We can see here that as the priesthood of Amen is spreading out from Egypt to the surrounding region, that the local gods are being joined with Amen, like when Amen was joined with Ra in the 12th dynasty. In Italy and Rome, they kept sacred hearths with a continuous fire always burning in honor of Ham or Amen. It's said that the good King Josiah broke down the altars of Baalim, which had pictures of Amen on top of them. So to the right here, we have a picture of the king of Judah. His name was Amen. And he worshipped Baal and the Egyptian god Amen in Judah. The kingdom of Judea and Amen. Josiah was a king of Judah from about 630 BCE to 609 BCE. His predecessor was Amen, who was supposedly his father, who was assassinated after a short reign because of his religious beliefs. That's the Amen we just discussed. So if an O, you see how it's Amon, and then Amen is Amen. The vowel can be anything and it still has the same meaning. It might vary, it might make a slight variation to the name, but it still has a similar meaning. It could mean like the senior Amen, or the junior Amen, or the older or the younger. Therefore, we see that the worship of Amen was in the kingdom of Judah, and that some of the Judean kings adopted it or may have always adhered to it. We know that Egypt, for the prior 1,000 years, consistently tried to expand its empire through Palestine and into Syria. We also know that they ruled over Judean and Palestine for many of these years, and that they installed Egyptian officials into government positions in Judea and Palestine. At the same time, tribes from the north and east were pushing their way south and west, trying to expand their control into these same regions. It's important and eye-opening to observe here that the king, Amen, who was worshiping the Egyptian god Amen, and Josiah were from the house of David. So I tend to look at the Jews as a from coming from the god Set, and um, that could that might just be, there might be a distinction between Jews and Israelites. They might be two separate people. Maybe the Israelites are in the northern kingdom and the Judah is in the southern kingdom, and the Judeans are actually worshiping sun gods, and then the northern Israelite kingdoms are actually worshiping Set, or what you would call Satan. So it makes me wonder, should I be calling, maybe I should start calling, I haven't got to that time period yet in my research. I'm moving into that direction, but maybe I should be maybe I shouldn't be calling Jews these Israelites, and we should be looking at the house of David as um, good people on the good side, if they're worshiping Amen and Ra, because Ra is never evil, he's always good. Okay, Mizraim and Osiris. Ham was the equivalent to Zeus of Greece, Jupiter of Italy, and Amen of Egypt. The worship of the Egyptian gods and goddesses spread to Greece. The edition of Bryant's book that I'm using here as a reference was published in 1807, and he says that almost all the gods of Greece came from somewhere else. The ancient scholar Philo says that Osiris is the brother of Canaan. And Bryant says that Mizraim or Mizar is the father of Egypt. A lot of people say Mizraim might be a plural name, like people, maybe people of Mizar. Mizar is probably the actual name. Many people equate Osiris with Mizraim. The famous Sanchoniathon says that Mizraim is the son of the shepherds, Ammonus and Magnus, of whom Bryant says Ammonus, without a doubt, is Amen or Ham. Therefore, we have a connection between the shepherds and Amen. Okay, Ham and Cush and Nubia. He says Magnus is probably Cush, son of Ham, who is the father of fire worship and a magi. Okay, magi we know are we heard of magi in Egypt, like Egyptian magicians, but magi can be of any city, right? That he is also the father of Scythians and Magog. That's interesting. The people of, or more likely the leaders of, the city of Sidon in Lebanon, near the famous city of Tyre, were the children of Cush. It's important here that we keep the distinction between Cush and Cush. This is the Cush of Nubia. Therefore, we have Ham and Cush coming from Nubia. This may be the same time as the 26th dynasty. So the 26th dynasty is famous for the the Cushite Nubians coming through Egypt and reinstating their power under the priesthood of Amen. So this is probably the time period that Bryant is discussing and talking about. So this will maybe be the time period of Magog also, and maybe the beginning of the Scythians. So for 3,000 years prior to, and this is in my other videos, but let me just give a brief explanation. 3,000 years prior to the beginning of the Egyptian dynasties, Nubians or Nilo-Saharan people, a different people from the Afro-Asiatic people of the native Egyptians, were pushing through the southern border of Egypt and pushing their way into Egypt. And their kings, they bring the kingship into Egypt. So, they might, all of them, or maybe the majority of them, of the Egyptian kings were probably Nubians or descendants of the Nubians. So I just want to put that out there for you. So these Nubians are making it all the way through Egypt and seem to even been making it into Palestine and other areas of the region, and even into the Persian Gulf region, which we discussed earlier in the Persian Gulf videos. There was a Nubian complex culture, ancient, like from 100,000 years ago, where they were sending out, it seems like they were sending out colonies to different areas around the whole Middle Eastern and Persian Gulf region. That's what it looks like happened. So they might in fact be the first empire. So let's just stop it right there. The spread of the worship of Nimrod or Unis. The first king of Chaldea was Aloris. The first king of Chaldea was Aloris, who was made the equivalent of Nimrod. Bryant says the story of Aloris Bryant says the story of Aloris will tell you the story of Nimrod. So if you can find the story of Aloris, the Chaldean Aloris, that will give you information about Nimrod. Nimrod had the title of Orion, and the Cushite colonies moved westward. So that was what I was just talking about. The Greeks called Nimrod Nimrod, and there were mountains in Sicily called Nimrodis, which were known for its good hunting and therefore named after Nimrod. So you know how you say bro all the time? Nimbro. Maybe this is where it came from. Sicily seems to be, because we get our words from where they want us to get our words from. Sicily seems to be of great importance to ancient times and the sun gods. The Nimbridae of Athens and Kos were the descendants of the priest of Nimrod. Okay, so this means that the priest of Unis moved to, or also colonized, Athens and Kos. And we know Athens at Delphi has the serpent, and also what's the lady with all her snakes on her head? I can't think of her name, but they have a snake goddess, right? And Eve is a snake goddess. So here we see the priest of Unis moving from Egypt into Athens. Okay, the spread of Thoth and the sun god El. Nimrod seems to have been worshipped at Sicily under the name of Eloris, Peloris, and Orion. Nimrod was also given the same title as Belis. Eusebius says that the Egyptian god Thoth is the same as the Greek Hermes and the same as Ares of Arabia. He says that Thoth is the same as the German and Celtic Thiat Alt, whose sacrifices were very cruel. El, Al, and Ha are the same as Eli. And the Zambians apparently were star worshippers from northern Mesopotamia, and they made the god El a sun god in their region. The worship of the Canaanite god El. El was the head god of the Canaanites, and we know that Canaan was a son of Ammon or Ham. Therefore, if Ammon was a sun god, his sons would be two. So El is a sun god. Bryant says the Eastern nations, such as those of the Muslims and Turks, invoked, mean they called upon, the god El. So Muslims and Turks are also worshiping a sun god, Amen. Many places sacred to the sun were called Elon or El An. So so this is just the sun god. Sun An means sun. So Elon, and we may think of Elon Musk's name here. So the name Elon means the sun god, right? And we see Elon standing next to Trump in the White House with billions of dollars, which seems to be the Jews showing their power and wealth that they have. What I do is I equate Elon Musk standing next to Trump as Joseph next to the Pharaoh. Okay, bibliography. We have Jacob Bryant, New System or an Analysis of Ancient Mythology. We have E.A. Budge, Legend of the Gods. We have the Jebel Mara from the UNESCO World Heritage. We have Budge's History of Egypt, Volume 2. Thank you for watching. My name is Stephen Webb Jr. from San Diego, California. Take care and have a good evening.